So, at the beginning of The Hobbit, you may know that Bilbo says good morning to Gandalf. And Gandalf is like, well, what do you mean? You mean to wish me a good morning? And they get into a sort of an argument. And later, Bilbo says the same good morning to mean goodbye. And so Gandalf comments again about how he's using good morning to mean both goodbye and hello and goodbye. In French, you do not have this issue because you don't use the same phrase for greeting and parting like good morning you do in English. And the reason is in French you have this little structure EE. Okay, what is this? You've certainly seen this before. It goes on the end of words. This is the past participle ending. And you see an equivalent in English and other Romance languages like ada on the end, okay? And one very clear example where you have, there's a word in English that comes from Spanish, armada, and the equivalent French is armée, from which we get the word army. In Spanish it means armed, like armadillo. It's something armored or armed, so an armored fleet, an armed group of men. So this EE on the end, pronounced E, this is the past participle and the resultant adjective. It's something that has been acted upon and transformed. And so what does that mean in terms of greetings, in terms of your day-to-day speech? Okay, so you probably, of course, know bonjour to say hello. To say goodbye, you may have learned bonne journée. Okay. Now there is a direct equivalent to what Bilbo said. There is bon matin. Okay, but this is something that you will only hear in Quebec. Okay, you don't hear this in Europe, as far as I know. And if you do, it's someone intentionally trying to sound like a Quebecois. But the equivalent would be bonne matinée. Okay, so when you see these parts of the day with this ending, this means either something that, like the entire rest of that portion, like this is what you say when you arrive, and then you're wishing someone that the rest of the day is good for them. And it's always, whenever you see EE like this, it's always feminine, and so you have the feminine version of bon is bonne. But here you see that a matinee, that's also an event that happens during the morning. And so you will see that for like brunches or whatever, you will see it used like that, just not as a greeting. But in English, of course, we've taken matinee to mean a movie or an event that happens it used to mean during the morning, now it means just early in the day at some point. Of course, in movies, we're not going to see them at 9 a.m. But matinee means if you're wishing someone a rest of the morning. We have the same structure for bonsoir, the evening. And if you're saying goodbye, bonne soirée. Okay? Bonsoir when you greet someone in the evening, bonne soirée for when you're saying goodbye to them in the evening. Have a good rest of your evening. And then we also have bonne nuit. So nuit is on its own feminine, so it's bonne nuit. And we don't say bonne nuitée. We say bonne nuit is something that we don't greet someone with. It is something that we only say basically when someone's going to sleep. It is weird to say this to a stranger on the street. It's something you basically say in your family. You're wishing your kid good night. Say bonne nuit, dors bien, sleep well, fais des beaux rêves, have nice dreams. Bonne nuit basically means go to sleep now. Okay? Don't say it to a stranger. Bonsoir when you're greeting someone in the evening, and then bonne soirée when you're saying goodbye to someone in the evening. And of course, we also have in English a soirée an event that transpires throughout the evening. You do see the word nuite in only one context that I'm aware of, and that is hotels. So you might see that une nuitée costs like 80 euros or whatever, or francs or whatever. Nuitée, like the price for staying a night. It's nuitée. Okay, sorry, just making sure I have enough space. Let's go a little bit more in depth on this EE and talk about what else it can mean, because it's a very useful ending. And aside from just like the regular forms of verbs that you find, you'll see it in other places to make new and interesting words. So, as I may have mentioned, it can mean something that is measured out or acted upon by something. And so, once again, to go to the Spanish equivalent, you have the word cortar, which means to cut, and something acted on. You have cortado or cortada. Okay, and from cortado we get a coffee that is cut with milk, with a little bit of milk, a cortado. Okay, you have pan, which is bread, and something that is covered with bread, put in pan, is this. You have a sound change, empanada. Okay, in French you have, instead of empanada, you have pain, which is bread, and it comes from an earlier Latin where you don't have the I, you have pane. Something is pane, is put in bread. Empanada, put in bread, pane. You have your mouth is your bouche. Like I think in band you may have learned what I've heard you pronounce as embouchure. Your embouché. Embouché, I think it's like this. Bouche is your mouth, and so a bouchée is a mouthful of something. And and this is used only for food. A mouthful of food is a bouchée, and a mouthful of a liquid is called you have your gorge, throat, gorge. Mouthful of something is a gorgée of wine or something. So this EE ending, very interesting, very useful. You'll see it in a lot of places. If you see it, it almost always is just think about what goes before it, and try to work on just what goes before it to understand what it's getting at. Happy to answer any questions.